Hello, and welcome to the Planning 101 Community Planning Training. Before we begin, we want to take a moment to first thank everyone who has joined today's webinar. We understand that the timing of this webinar is unlike prior years. Social unrest rooted in historic racial injustices and heightened by the recent killings of Black and Brown people in our country, all set in the backdrop of a global pandemic and national and local political tensions, has rightfully caused individuals to question those in the position of authority. That said, city planning has approached today's webinar from a perspective of equitable and transparent access to information. Today's training is intended to introduce the work of City Planning's Community Planning Bureau and to explain how we take our broad citywide goals and objectives, as well as our community plan documents, and translate them into local zoning rules. Before we begin, a reminder that at any time during the presentation, you can enter your question or comment in the questions field of the control panel. Throughout this presentation, we will have staff on hand to assist. If you have audio issues, feel free to change your audio output to computer audio or phone call. Please also note that as an attendee, you are automatically muted for the duration of the presentation. Now to the presentation. This is the third installment of our current Planning 101 training series. If you haven't had a chance to watch our past trainings, we encourage you to look them up on our website, planningforla.org. That's planning, the number 4, la.org. Select videos from the resources menu, and that will take you to all of City Planning's videos, including 4 short trainings on policy planning. These videos establish a foundation for understanding how community planning supports the work of the department. This particular training will educate Angelenos on how local zoning decisions are made and how the vision and goals of the city's general plan, in particular the 35 community plans comprising its land use element, inform the types of projects that can be constructed on a parcel of land. Before we formally introduce the concept of a community plan and go into the details of the program in Los Angeles, we want to take a few minutes to provide an overview of the city's geography, demographics, and government. After the presentation, we'll conclude by taking some questions. In case we don't get to all of your questions, we encourage you to email us at planning.liaison@lacity.org. We will answer every question we receive. Let's get started with the citywide overview. Los Angeles is the second largest city in the United States, with about 4 million people speaking over 200 languages. Its area of 469 square miles encompasses mountains, beaches, and a river, as well as dense urban, suburban, and semi-rural neighborhoods. Taking a closer look at our city's demographics, you'll notice that the median age in Los Angeles is 35. We have roughly an equal number of self-identifying males and females, and a healthy age distribution, with the largest representation between the ages of 30 and 39. These statistics point to the youth and dynamism of Los Angeles population, qualities that shape the policies that we are developing for our community plan updates. And as far as our demographics are concerned, nearly 50% of Angelenos are Latino, about 28% are white, 12% are Asian, and about 8% are Black. Respecting the diversity of Los Angeles' population and geography is one of city planning's main responsibilities. So what exactly is the role of city planning, and why is it important to our community? According to the American Planning Association, planning provides benefits such as housing choice, safer communities, better commutes, and neighborhoods of lasting value. We can also view planning as a process and consider the role it plays in arranging buildings, roads, and other structures so society can function effectively. Through planning, cities promote access to new neighborhood-serving amenities and housing. Either way, planning is about working with our residents and other local departments to build consensus and to promote new land use policies. In this regard, planning is the means by which cities and counties balance their long-term needs, whether they relate to mobility, jobs, infrastructure, housing, open space, or design. In many ways, our community plans lead these citywide discussions on how we can positively effectuate change, a topic we will return to later today. Planning departments may be structured differently, but at Los Angeles City Planning, we are led by our Director of Planning, Vince Bertoni. Director Bertoni relies upon his deputy directors to oversee the department's 4 bureaus, and his executive officer to manage the citywide affairs of the department and to provide direct support on a number of strategic initiatives. The members of the executive team work together to advance the shared goals and objectives of the department and its staff. The Citywide Policy Planning Bureau manages long-range planning efforts, setting policy goals and objectives that inform the work at the neighborhood level, from the department's housing policies to its legislative agenda on issues related to the environment and mobility. The Community Planning Bureau oversees the updates to the city's community plans, which, as we briefly mentioned, help inform local zoning decisions and the types of uses that are permitted on each parcel of land, working alongside a myriad of neighborhood and other local organizations and groups. The Project Planning Bureau is responsible for city planning's development review functions. This bureau processes land use applications, administers plans, and implements zoning regulations, in addition to conducting the necessary level of environmental review for any proposed project that requires the department's consideration. The Operations and Engagement Bureau, on the other hand, provides the technical, administrative, and financial services that are critical to the success of the entire department, in addition to informing the outreach, communications, and citywide engagement strategies created in recent years to directly support the policy work at hand. These 4 bureaus represent the 400+ individuals who work for our department. The Community Planning Bureau oversees the task of keeping all 35 of the city's community plans up to date. It also carries out a number of smaller-scale neighborhood planning initiatives that help to implement the city's general plan. The staff members assigned to the Bureau belong to one of 3 distinct geographic divisions. The 8 plans of the Central East geography cover Glassell Park to the east, downtown to the south, Mid-City to the west, and Hollywood to the north. The 14 plans of the Valley geography encompass a large portion of the city, from Sylmar to Toluca Lake and from Chatsworth to Tujunga. The 12 plans that make up the Southwest Harbor geography stretch from Brentwood to Westchester and from West Adams to Wilmington. What is a community plan? To answer this question, it's helpful to start off by providing a general overview of long-range planning in Los Angeles. This will clarify the Community Planning Bureau's role in advancing policies, goals, and objectives for our city and its neighborhoods. In California, every city and county's long-range planning starts with its general plan. The general plan serves as a blueprint for the future, prescribing policies and programs that shape and guide local development. A general plan reflects its community's values on issues including housing, climate change adaptation, conservation, and land use. Here we will take a look at how the general plan helps to shape our community plans and how both inform our zoning regulations. Like a book, a general plan consists of chapters devoted to different topics related to land use. Each chapter or element of the general plan covers an aspect of the urban environment. While the state mandates that a general plan must have a minimum of 7 elements, it does not prescribe rules on how they are to be organized. Los Angeles' general plan currently consists of 12 elements. The framework element is the city's chief land use document. It sets out the overarching vision of the general plan. Since its adoption in 1996, the framework has focused new development around transit and employment districts in an effort to reduce development pressures on existing neighborhoods and ecologically sensitive areas. While the framework is the umbrella of the general plan, it is the land use element comprised of 35 community plans that delves further into neighborhood policies. Because of the sheer size of Los Angeles and the unique characteristics of its neighborhoods, community plans help set specific neighborhood-level policies in motion for clearly defined geographic areas. Along with the other general plan elements, the community plans, as the land use element, play a pivotal role in justifying the approval or denial of discretionary project applications. Planners consult these policy documents to justify the findings for project applications. In the 1960s, the community plans, then called broadsides, were large fold-out maps accompanied by policy text. Over time, the program evolved as more extensive goals and policies emerged. Today, each community plan consists of a policy document and a land use map, accompanied by a set of zoning tools. The policy document lays out the community's goals, policies, and programs, while the land use map identifies where uses such as residential, commercial, and industrial are permitted. Together, the policy document and the land use map inform local zoning decisions. It is through these updates to the community plans that zoning tools are developed. We will now take some time to break down each of these components and illustrate them with real-life examples. Within the policy document, there are goals, policies, and programs, each of which are listed in the community plan document. Goals are aspirational in nature and written as expressions of desired outcomes. For example, a goal can include advancing accessible, healthy, and safe housing opportunities for affordable to low-income households, as outlined in Land Use Goal 3 of the Downtown Community Plan Update. Policies guide how we achieve those goals and provide important guidance on proposed discretionary projects or projects that require city planning's review to ensure that they align with the stated goals of the community plan. Going back to the previous example, while our overarching goal may be to expand affordable housing opportunities, a corresponding policy tied to that specific goal could be to facilitate the preservation of existing residential units and avoid displacement of current downtown residents. Programs are intended to help implement both the goals and policies of the plan. Think of the programs as the outgrowth of the community plan. For example, consider one of the affordable housing programs in the proposed update to the Downtown Community Plan. The No Net Loss program aims to minimize the displacement of residents and ensure there is no loss of affordable rental housing, covenanted or not, including affordable rent-stabilized units in targeted neighborhoods. These programs can be viewed as future implementable programs. In this case, the Housing and Community Investment Department and City Attorney's Office would jointly spearhead developing the No Net Loss program, given the nature of this issue and the need to draft an ordinance that would further regulate the preservation of affordable units. Having outlined the components of a community plan policy document, we will now turn to the land use map. While the policy document speaks in aspirational terms, the land use map depicts the permitted land use for each parcel in the community plan area. These designations are binding, meaning unalterable. During the community plan update process, each property is assigned a land use designation, and each designation corresponds to zones identified by the map legend. Each community plan determines which zones are eligible for each land use designation. When city planning considers project applications, decision makers must strike a balance between competing goals and policies, a normal occurrence given how resources are limited, and at times, discretion is required to make the best informed decision based on a number of factors. In the end, some goals and policies may be more compelling than others, providing the underlying basis for why a project was ultimately approved or denied. And at the end of any community plan update process, zoning is identified for properties within the plan's boundaries. Zoning allows the city to apply specific development standards to each property. These zoning regulations regulate the size and scale of future development projects. In Los Angeles, we also have overlays, which supplement the underlying base zoning and are applied to properties within a narrow geography. Some overlays stay within the boundaries of a single community plan, while others overlap several community plans. Often, city planning develops these tailored zoning districts to support neighborhood-specific policy objectives. For example, a community design overlay might contain design regulations to enhance the visual identity and character of a neighborhood. A historic preservation overlay, on the other hand, might address exterior alterations or additions to historic properties in order to protect neighborhoods with distinct architectural and cultural resources. These are, again, customized zoning regulations developed to achieve a very specific goal or result. That brings us to zoning and the role the community plan updates play in informing local land use regulations. But first, a quick recap of what we've covered so far. The plan document states the goals, policies, and programs associated with each plan update. The land use map generally identifies where broad categories of land uses will be located within the boundaries of a community plan. Which brings us back to the question, how do counties and cities translate land use goals and policies into development standards and requirements? In Los Angeles and other cities across the United States, zoning regulations define the allowable uses, size, and scale of development projects. Zoning helps to support neighborhood identity by regulating the activities within each building and the appearance of each building from the street level. During community plan updates, residents have an opportunity to change or adjust the zoning rules to create new space for emerging industries, housing, or even parks. For example, today, much of downtown only allows industrial uses. Preserving industrial land is important to accommodate a variety of jobs. Older zoning tools have, however, permitted antiquated uses to persist instead of introducing new industry sectors. That is why, as part of the Downtown Community Plan update process, we are introducing a new zoning tool called Hybrid Industrial. This particular use district changes the current industrial zoning to allow a range of light manufacturing, creative office and production, and live-work residential uses within the same building, to better accommodate emerging employment sectors while also advancing more housing opportunities. Another example, in Little Tokyo and a few other neighborhoods, new zoning tools have been introduced to limit the size of ground floor commercial uses to help preserve existing small or locally operated businesses and to maintain a fine-grained pedestrian environment along local streets. While project review may not be the explicit focus of this presentation, we should take a moment to explain how our zoning relates to project review. Simply put, the goals and policies set forth in the community plan inform whether city planning recommends applications and planning entitlements for approval during the project review phase. Now, let's take a look at some real-life examples from the Downtown Community Plan update of how zoning can unlock new opportunities for housing and jobs. In the slides that follow, we'll introduce the new zoning framework and explain how the community plan update process will implement changes to our zoning. Several years ago, city planning set out to comprehensively revise the zoning code. This project, one of Los Angeles' largest planning initiatives to date, aimed to establish a regulatory framework that would guide development planning decisions well into the 21st century. The modern and tailored system we have developed will eventually be applied across the city once all of our 35 community plans have gone through the update process. With this new zoning framework, Los Angeles will be better positioned to evaluate buildings' physical character in relation to their surroundings, taking everything from their height to their facades' interaction with pedestrians into consideration. American cities initially approached zoning as a tool for protecting citizens' health and safety. Its main function was to regulate the most negative impacts associated with the use of a building. As times have changed, so have the priorities of our communities. As opposed to focusing on the negative, the city is exploring ways to achieve better land use outcomes by modernizing its zoning. The new zoning code will separate regulations governing the built environment from those that govern a property's use, establishing clear rules that address both land use and buildings' mass and scale. The new code is based on the understanding that the physical character of a building, its form or built environment, is equally as important as what people are allowed to do with it, its use or activity. We plan to deliver on this front by introducing a series of new zoning districts. The proposed DNA for our new zoning framework consists of 5 key districts or components: form, frontage, development standards, use, and density. While form, frontage, and development standards regulate the built environment, use and density refer to the activities, essentially the uses, that are allowed on a site. Form districts will establish a building's size based on the lot size, building coverage, setbacks, floor area, bulk, and mass. Form districts will help us improve how we regulate the scale of new buildings along a street or corridor, setting limits to their size and shape. Frontage districts will shape a building's relationship with a public right-of-way, regulating ground floor height, windows, entrances, and pedestrian access. By focusing on building elements along the street front, frontage districts will improve certain design features, including elements of a building that impact the pedestrian experience. Everything from a building's proximity to the street and ground floor height requirements to the placement of its front entrances and windows. Development standards districts will enable us to tailor regulations to suit neighborhoods' needs. These are regulations that will vary from community to community, such as parking ratios, design requirements, landscaping standards, and rules for on-site lighting and signage. They will also shape the aesthetic features of a site, including the amount of open space around buildings and even the number of trees planted on site. Use districts will identify the package of uses that are allowed on a property. They are generally organized in the new zoning code by the type of use emphasized, such as residential, commercial, or industrial, among others. Use districts will permit a more diverse range of activities than our zoning currently allows. In some neighborhoods, residential use districts may exclude everything but single-family homes, while others may be more permissive, adopting use districts that accommodate a mix of residential and commercial uses on the same property. Density districts will focus on specifying the number of residential dwelling units and guest rooms permitted on a lot, otherwise known as density. If a property is zoned for higher density, it means more housing units, whereas lower density zoning means fewer units are permitted on site. Each of these districts is an independent component of our zoning string. At the same time, the 5 modules work together as the basis of a more flexible and tailored set of land use standards that will serve the future needs of our residents and businesses. Every time city planning launches an update to one of its 35 community plans, the department will develop new zoning for that plan. Downtown will be the first plan area to apply the new zoning framework, and the Boyle Heights Community Plan update also includes new zoning. Neighborhoods in the harbor, the southeast and southwest San Fernando Valley, and the west side will be next to get new zoning as the community plan update process continues. Turning our attention again to downtown. This August, we released draft zoning for the Downtown Community Plan update. The update aims to accommodate 20% of Los Angeles' future housing growth within just 1% of the city's landmass. It would accomplish this by nearly doubling the area where housing, including permanent supportive and affordable housing, is permitted, increasing it from 33% to 60% of the total area. Additionally, the plan, as currently proposed, introduces opportunities for different types of housing to accommodate a variety of living situations, lifestyles, income levels, and age groups, including live-work units, family-size units, and micro-units. The plan would realize its vision for housing in downtown by introducing new zones that benefit from the new zoning framework. These zones will make it possible to customize the types of buildings and corresponding uses in the area. This is an important step for our future. As Los Angeles grows, new housing and jobs should be located near trains, buses, and bike lanes so that people can move through the city without being solely dependent on cars. Encouraging development near high-quality transit downtown will help to reduce traffic in other neighborhoods and combat the effects of climate change. Of course, zoning isn't only about creating additional opportunities for housing. Zoning can also support job growth and economic activity. As this slide shows, we're updating the zoning across downtown to expand the area for mixed use. What does that mean? Essentially, we're saying you can have a neighborhood with a mix of office buildings, residential buildings, and neighborhood-serving uses, like grocery stores. In a mixed-use neighborhood, residents have the option to walk to work, as well as easily access restaurants, community centers, and recreational opportunities. Does this mean we'll introduce housing to all parts of downtown? No. We wouldn't allow housing in a neighborhood that is zoned heavy industrial. However, as the historic core and Little Tokyo have shown, other neighborhoods with housing in proximity to jobs could be suitable for mixed use, which is why we're expanding the amount of mixed-use area in downtown. While today, 80% of the plan area is relegated to a single use, we are proposing to broaden the activities permitted on-site in much of downtown. To that end, we're introducing new zoning tools designed to support small and legacy businesses along with residential uses. However, in downtown's historically industrial areas, where the introduction of housing and commercial uses is appropriate, the department proposes that a baseline of job-generating uses should have to be met when introducing new housing. This policy aims to provide job opportunities for all skill levels and educational backgrounds, and to support the city's economic interests. We recognize that downtown is an economic hub for the city, and we don't want to introduce housing at the expense of new job opportunities. That is why we are proposing to create an industrial job sanctuary in the southeast portion of the plan, where heavy industry continues to serve an important economic function. All of this demonstrates how nuanced the planning process is. With the flexibility of our new zoning system, we can address neighborhoods' jobs and housing needs without sacrificing their health and well-being. In addition to unlocking new opportunities, zoning can also impose limitations on, say, building height, in order to align future development with the needs and character of our neighborhoods. You see why the community plan update process is so important. It is intended to give the city a hand in shaping development decisions that impact your life as a voter, resident, and stakeholder. The city's new zoning tools can also regulate building facade features to retain the historic and cultural context of our cherished neighborhoods. As planners, we recognize that neighborhood groups, renters and homeowners, as well as business groups and community-based organizations, help shape a city's identity and are the core of any healthy society. Their contributions are greatest when they are actively engaged in the local decision-making process. Interactive story maps have proven to be a useful tool for exchanging information with neighborhood groups. Drawing on the power of GIS mapping technology, story maps helps local stakeholders stay informed during the community plan update process. In the case of the Downtown Community Plan Update, for example, the interactive story map clearly identifies where changes have been proposed to the existing land use designations, height, massing, and so on. Story maps are easy to follow because they don't presuppose any familiarity with planning and land use terms. Openness and transparency are two of our department's guiding principles. We take great pride in the Los Angeles Times recognition of our efforts to update the zoning code, debuted in the Downtown Community Plan Update. The Times editorial noted an exciting change happening downtown, where the planning department has unveiled a new community plan that could be a model for development reform citywide. The goal is to make the rules clear and do away with the case-by-case negotiation between the developer and the council member. On the topic of transparency and, more broadly, outreach, we have reserved a few minutes before the end of the presentation for an overview of the public participation process, namely, what outreach looks like and how you can participate before we open up the discussion to questions. While each community plan update may follow a somewhat different process, they all pass through the same stages along the way. We want you to be aware of these stages so you can participate and provide feedback. Generally, community plan updates go through 5 main phases. Community engagement and stakeholder outreach are an important part of each stage and are integral to the community plan update process. On the next few slides, we will look at each stage in detail, including the opportunities for public participation. For the purposes of this presentation, we've chosen to focus on the Downtown Community Plan Update to give you a better sense of how community engagement has been integrated into each phase. The listening phase is the first phase of the update process. This phase includes technical research such as reviewing existing and past plans, demographics, and environmental and economic conditions. During this phase, we begin community engagement by introducing ourselves and the plan update to the community. This early engagement is very important because it gives city planning an opportunity to learn about issues, opportunities, goals, and the vision of the community, which will guide the entire process. Types of outreach during this phase include focus groups with community organizations, public visioning workshops, presentations to community groups like neighborhood councils, and tabling at community events like farmers markets. We may use tools such as surveys to gain more feedback. In the case of the Downtown Community Plan Update, during this initial phase of outreach, we held and participated in many community events to gather feedback from property owners, business groups, residents, nonprofits, and community-based organizations. Throughout the sharing phase, we continue to engage the community to develop and share plan concepts. During this phase, city planning continues to meet with community groups and attend events, and hold open houses or workshops to share policy and zoning concepts. This is an important opportunity to gain feedback early in the development of the plan, which helps to guide technical tasks. We also use our website to share concepts and communicate with the public. For the Downtown Community Plan Update, City Planning hosted a week-long open studio event to share draft plan concepts, vision statements, and to host dialogues during this phase. We then incorporated the feedback we received into the draft plan. During the consulting phase, we continue to check in with the community while we draft the plan text, plan map, and zoning map. Outreach in this phase focuses on sharing concepts as they are further developed. Examples of outreach during this phase include focus groups, presentations to community groups, office hours, and tabling at community events. In the case of the Downtown Community Plan Update, City Planning met with hundreds of stakeholders and attended many community events. The refinement phase offers an opportunity for City Planning to share a draft plan with the community. During this phase, we release the draft plan and zoning and conduct outreach to both inform the community and hear their feedback. We then use this feedback to further refine the draft plan before it is presented to decision makers. Types of engagement in this phase include open houses, presentations to community groups, office hours, and the public hearing. We also use digital tools such as webinars and interactive maps to share the draft and take comments on our website. Outreach during the refinement phase of the Downtown Community Plan Update included 2 public open houses and 2 rounds of office hours. The public hearing is a critical step of the plan update process. There, the community can make formal comments on the draft plan, which will be included in the recommendation report to decision makers during the adoption phase. The public hearing for the Downtown Community Plan will be held this December. During the adoption phase, City Planning presents the recommended draft plan to the decision makers, the City Planning Commission, and City Council. The decision makers consider public feedback in the form of oral testimony during commission and council meetings, as well as written comments as they make final decisions on the proposed plan. There is an opportunity for the community to attend and comment at each step of the adoption process, and public comment helps to guide the decision-making process. In the case of the Downtown Community Plan Update, the adoption phase will begin in early 2021, when the City Planning Commission will consider the draft plan. The Planning and Land Use Management Committee of the City Council and the full Council will consider the plan after the City Planning Commission makes its recommendation. Before the plan goes into effect, the City Attorney will review it for form and legality. As you can see, community engagement is a crucial and integral part of each phase of the Community Plan Update process. City planning works not only to educate and inform the community, but also to listen so that community experience, knowledge, and vision are woven into the plan. While the bulk of this presentation focused on downtown, since it is the Community Plan Update closest to the finish line, we are also revisiting the proposed policies and zoning for other community plan areas in Los Angeles. In 2016 and 2017, the City Council adopted 4 community plans: West Adams, Baldwin Hills, Leimert, San Pedro, South Los Angeles, and Southeast Los Angeles. The community plans for Granada and Selmar were updated in 2015. In total, 16 community plan updates are underway, covering 180 square miles, approximately 40% of the city. Within the Central East geography, updates to 4 of the region's plan areas are underway. First is Hollywood, second is Boyle Heights, third is Central City, and fourth is Central City North. the latter two areas comprising the downtown plan. In the Valley, city planning has initiated updates to 6 community plans. First, Canoga Park, Winnetka, West Hills, Woodland Hills. Second, Reseda, West Van Nuys. Third, Encino Tarzana. Fourth, Sherman Oaks, Studio City, Toluca Lake, Cahuenga Pass. Fifth, Van Nuys, North Sherman Oaks. And sixth, North Hollywood, Valley Village. Once these plans are completed, updates to the 8 remaining plans in the North Valley will commence, as illustrated on this map. Lastly, in the Southwest Harbor area, there are 7 plan updates underway, covering a geography that includes 1. Harbor Gateway, 2. Wilmington Harbor, 3. West Los Angeles, 4. Palms Mar Vista, 5. Venice, 6. Delray, and 7. Westchester Playa del Rey. Once these updates are completed, we'll shift to the next wave of plan updates. No different than the Downtown Community Plan, these plan updates showcase city planning's commitment to advancing tailored strategies and neighborhood regulations to facilitate future development decisions. To balance the need for jobs and housing with neighborhood preservation, these plans reflect the priorities of each community and the city as a whole, in keeping with our promise to local stakeholders. That concludes the formal portion of this presentation. Again, we want to thank you for your time and attention. Thank you.